Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. Hey, this is your literary terms notes video. So turn to page 185 in your book. It's blank, okay, because you don't have the notes that I have yet. But it says literary terms on the top, page 185, and we are going to fly through these, okay? So these are literary terms that we need to become familiar with. So as we're reading, we're like, oh, this is clearly what the author is using here. So number one, allegory. Allegory, okay? An allegory is a story that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning. Usually this is moral or political is how we see it. For example, Aesop's Fables, the tortoise and the hare. Okay, that whole story is an allegory because it teaches that steady perseverance is better than like a fast spurt, but then you get lazy at the end. Okay, if you have read any Edgar Allan Poe, there's quite a bit of allegory in his stuff. He has a very creepy short story called The Mask of the Red Death that's about when plague was sweeping through Europe. This fictional prince Prospero is like, I'm rich, I'm young, I'm happy, I'm gonna leave all these people to die and take like 100 of my best friends who are all also rich and young and beautiful, and we're gonna lock ourselves in this fortress and we're gonna weld the bolts and we're just gonna party until everyone dies that's gonna die and the plague passes. Okay, and this idea that your wealth and your youth and your good looks will protect you. In the end, it didn't work out so well because the Red Death got inside the abbey and the plague killed everybody in there because nobody could get out because they had sealed themselves in. And so the allegory or the message of this is that death is not a respecter of any wealth. Okay, so that's an allegory. Just because a story has a lesson doesn't mean it's an allegory. C.S. Lewis himself said that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is not allegory. There are pictures of Christ and there are pictures of biblical ideas, but it is not an allegory, which is like a one-to-one lesson that teaches something, okay? So that's number one. Number two, alliteration. Alliteration. Okay, this is when the same letter or sound occurs at the beginning of a word and those words are in close proximity. Okay, the most obvious of these are tongue twisters. Peter, Piper, picked a peck of pickled peppers, all starting with the P sound at the beginning of each word. It can be a little less obvious than that. I think about in Harry Potter, movie 4, Professor McGonagall is teaching the Gryffindors how to dance, and she says the Gryffindors will not behave like a babbling, bumbling band of baboons. And then she does her little face, which is totally McGonagall. Okay, that's alliteration used in a larger story instead of just a tongue twister or a poem. Our brains like alliteration. You don't want to use too much of it if you're writing prose, which is story. In poetry, you can use a lot more, but our brains like hearing that. It's artistic. Third, characterization. Characterization. This is the creation or construction of a fictional character. Okay, so you guys started putting together your own fictional character and you were doing characterization as you thought through like their physical qualities, their emotional qualities, and then their socioeconomic qualities. And then when you write the story, you reveal characterization throughout the story through what they say in their dialogue and how they say it. You reveal it through how they act or react to the plot happening to them, and then through description of what they look like and how they're doing the things that they do. So think about characterization reveals itself in their speech, their thoughts, and their actions in a story, okay, because you're creating this person. A great example, I think, of characterization is we've got the new wave of Jumanji movies coming out. And in the first Jumanji with, I think it's Welcome to the Jungle is what it's called, we've got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing Dr. Bravestone. He's doing very well in acting out the characterization of that character because he is not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing Bravestone. He is, okay, this is like inception of characterizations. He is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing the actor that played Spencer playing Dr. Bravestone, okay? there's 4 levels there of characterization. So that's why throughout the whole movie there's parts where Dwayne Johnson is acting out being nervous, being nerdy, not knowing what to do. He's not aware that he has a super strong body, and he's slowly coming to grips with this character that he is playing in the game Jumanji, okay? So he is saying things in certain ways, he's reacting in certain ways, and all of that is revealing his character. So that's characterization. Fourth, creative license. You will also sometimes hear this defined as artistic license or poetic license, okay? This is when an artist or a poet or a director or a writer feels the freedom to deviate from fact or form for artistic purpose. What does that mean? What it means is, in order to make something better, you're going to take a little deviation from what is absolutely true or what is like the common form of grammar. So in poetry, you may end a line with something a little bit different than what's grammatically correct, but it still makes enough sense in order to get that rhyme or to make that impact. In a biography, like if you are familiar with the movie The King's Speech, it's about Prince Albert during World War II. He had a speech, major stuttering speech impediment, and the lengths he went through to overcome that and eventually lead his country through the war. Obviously, in that biographical movie, some things were changed with creative license to make it a more seamless movie to follow a character arc. Some things were cut out. Maybe some characters were cut out. Some specific details and facts, all to help tell the story in a way that's easier for the viewer to watch, and it makes itself more valuable as a piece of art. Okay. Next one, dialogue. Pretty straightforward. Dialogue is the direct quotations, the conversation that is happening between two or more people in a story. And dialogue, again, is a way to reveal characterization, because you're writing characters saying things how they would say it. Next one, dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the opposite of what is expected happens. Like, for example, if there is a fire that burns down a building and that building happens to be a fire station. That's some dramatic irony in the plot there. It can be irony in words, like cruel kindness. Okay, it's a cruel kindness to do that to me. Or in a character like a pilot who is afraid of heights. So it's unexpected things that are put together that make it ironic, okay? It can also be when in a story the full significance of the character's words or actions are unclear to the character, but the audience is realizing what's happening, okay? So for example, there could be a character who is a good guy, okay, and he is trying to get revenge on a bad guy. So to get revenge, he disguises himself and he like ingratiates himself, and he's going to be like a bodyguard for the bad guy. And the bad guy's like, just stick with me, man. I know I can trust you to be by my side. And the good guy's like, oh, you know it, because he's waiting for that right time to exact his revenge. So the bad guy character has no idea what his words really mean, but we do, because we know the motivation of what's happening. So there's a lot of different types of irony that can happen in a story. Next one, exposition. This is any time that the author is explaining what's happening or has happened in the story in a very matter-of-fact way. It's all the stuff that's not description and outside of dialogue in a story that you'll find in there. It's the action that moves it ahead. That's what exposition, okay, is all about. The next thing I want you to do is write down the term figurative language, okay, right here, and then all the definitions are just going to be a little bit pushed in, okay, into a new I would say like bullet point here, because these are all different types of figurative language. Okay, so write down figurative language, and then the first thing you're going to put under figurative language is a simile. This is something you've been learning since like second grade, okay? A simile is a comparison using like or as, okay? He was as strong as an ox. He was as big as a bear. Now, those are cliches, but they are similes, so you can see what they are. The next one is a metaphor, okay? A metaphor is a direct comparison. So you're taking out like or as, and what happens is something much stronger. Instead of saying he was as strong as an ox, you just say he was an ox. Okay, we know he wasn't an ox. We know it's a comparison, but it's that strong pushing together of two ideas. So you now equate him with ox. He was an ox. The man was a bear. Okay, so that's the difference between a simile and a metaphor. Hyperbole. I've been hearing a lot of hyperbole in my life, being home at quarantine, and I've been thinking a lot of hyperbole. Okay, and hyperbole is an extreme exaggeration to make a point. Okay, my hyperbole that I've been living by is I think my children want to eat about 3.5 million meals a day. You know that they're not anywhere near 3.5 million meals a day. The reality is like 3 meals and 1800 snacks. Ha! There's another hyperbole, okay? I'm exaggerating for the humorous effect of making a point. My kids are living in a hyperbole because they think they are starving to death, which causes them to want 1.8 million meals. Are they really starving to death? No, they're living by hyperbole. So it's an extreme exaggeration to make a point. Next type of figurative language is a personification. Personification. This is giving non-human characteristics or personality to, these are giving a non-human element like a personality or human characteristics without physically changing it. Okay, so let's say I've got my phone. With personification in a story, I can start talking to my phone. Okay, like, oh, phone, where are you? Why are you hiding from me? I'm giving it personification there. It's becoming a person, even though like it doesn't have eyes and it's not walking around and it's not talking back to me. But I can make it a character just by treating it like a human character, which is different than the next thing, anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. This is where you change a non-human element into a more human-like existence. Okay, this is where you get Narnia's talking animals. That's anthropomorphism. They are actually speaking and exhibiting human characteristics. This is your VeggieTales, where the vegetables have eyes and a nose and a mouth, and they're talking and they're doing things, okay? So personification, I am treating something as a person without actually changing it, like my phone. Phone, what are you doing? Why is your battery dying? Okay? Anthropomorphism, it's actually non-human things taking on human characteristics. Next one, figurative language, is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, okay? That is using words that make the sound that you're trying to get across. Like in the old Batman shows where they would fight and it would be like, pow, whack, smack, punch. All of those are onomatopoeias. We also have more subtle ones like bubble or murmur or babbling, okay? All those things are onomatopoeias. They sound like what you're trying to get across. Next figurative language is an oxymoron. This is a contradictory words. Contradictory words. This is where it comes in. Okay, so it's not exactly dramatic license. It's oxymoron is things like cruel kindness, or I would say a sharp compliment. Okay, things that are oxymorons. They're not supposed to fit together. They're contradictory, but you're putting them together. Okay. Then this is similar to a paradox. They're like cousins. You can hear the oxymoron, paradox. They have same roots in there. Okay, a paradox is a situation, a person, or a thing that brings contradictory features or qualities together. Okay, a situation, person, or thing that combines contradictory qualities or features together. An example of this would be there is an operetta called Pirates of Penzance, and if you've been in the theater world or you enjoy musicals at all, you may have watched this. The contradictory paradox that's in this whole story is there's a character named Frederick who's been indentured to a pirate king. His nurse made a mistake, and instead of indenturing him to a pilot to learn how to pilot a vessel, she heard wrong and indentured him to a pirate. And Frederick has a great sense of justice. He wants to get out of piracy, but his indentured apprenticeship lasts until he's 21. So on his 21st birthday, he expresses like, I'm leaving, I'm out to spread justice in the world, and I'm sorry because I like you, but you're a pirate, so I'm going to have to fight against you. And the Pirate King's like, I know, it's so sad. Won't you stay with us? But Frederick's like, nope, I'm 21, I'm out of here. Well, the paradox comes in that the Pirate King discovers that Frederick was born on February 29th. And his indentured servitude says that he has to work for the Pirate King until his 21st birthday. And the paradox is, according to birthdays, though Frederick has been on the earth for 21 years, he's only had 5 birthdays. So he is a 5-year-old, 21-year-old. And because of that, the Pirate King ropes him back into servitude, and he's trying to figure all this stuff out. So that's the paradox. He is a 5-year-old, 21-year-old. Contradictory terms, but they're combined in a person, okay? The last thing I want you to write down for figurative language is repetition. This is simply repeating the same words or phrases a few times to make an idea clearer or to give it emphasis and make it more memorable. This is where we see in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, he says, I have a dream over and over again, and it has become the I have a dream speech. And it's to make it memorable. He wants to pound it into your head that this is his dream and all of these things are good dreams. Okay, so now we're jumping back out of our little figurative language, out here to foreshadowing, okay? Foreshadowing. This is where you have a hint, either explicitly, meaning very obvious, or implicitly, you're implying it, of what is coming next, okay? This is when you have the little did he know phrase that comes in is very explicit. Little did he know this would be his last meal in that house. And you're like, dun, dun, dun. You can hear the music come in because that's foreshadowing of something that's going to happen. It can be a little more implicit, like a lot of times in movies, the foreshadowing will be a letter that's received, a phone call that the person doesn't quite understand, but you're like, this is not going to go well. It could be as simple as the music changes is giving you some foreshadowing when it gets real haunting and creepy. Or I think about when the rain starts or the lighting gets dark. Okay, all of that is forms of foreshadowing. When you see it in literature, it's something that's written into the story that gives you a clue of what's coming. Next is imagery. This is anything in a story or a poem that appeals to the five senses. I've been reading through some Laura Ingalls Wilder with my kids while we've been on quarantine. And my son loves the story Farmer Boy, about a little farmer boy named Almanzo who grows up on a farm in New York. And he's 8 and then turns 9 in the book. And there is so much food imagery and it makes me hungry. It's talking about the steaming pies of chicken and ham and the fried hot donuts that's just filling this jar that he can eat at any time. And creamy porridge and baked apples and blackstrap molasses candy, and he's just eating all the time. Fluffy mashed potatoes. It's almost lunch while I'm recording this, so I'm thinking a lot about food. But all of that is imagery that appeals to my sense of taste, okay? So it could be descriptions of cold mountain air. You can kind of sense that and feel that. It can be a sound that sounds like the tinkling of little bells, okay? That the jingling of bells appeals to your hearing. So anything that appeals to your five senses is imagery. Last two things. First is motif. This is a recurring image, idea, or symbol that develops or explains the theme. Now remember, the theme is the overarching central idea that the author is trying to convey about a subject, okay? So in Princess Bride, the overarching theme is nothing can stop true love. True love will win at the end, okay? So true love is the subject. The theme is nothing can stop true love. So that's just your reminder about theme. A motif is a reoccurring image, idea, or symbol. Okay, there's a movie written by M. Night Shyamalan that's one of like a suspense thriller called The Sixth Sense, and it came out forever ago. But one of the things was justice in death. Okay, and it follows the story of this detective who's trying to solve all these cold cases, murders that have never been solved, and he wants to bring justice to these victims. And there's a little boy who can see dead people. I see dead people. Okay, and so this detective teams up with him to solve these mysteries because this kid can see the dead people and talk to them. The motif is the color red. Every time the little boy can see a dead person or is about to see a dead person, there's a color red around, like a red doorknob behind a door or a red book in the bookshelf where a clue is to what will help them solve this mystery, okay? So that red is not the theme, red is the motif that helps clarify justice after death, okay, and symbolize that. Which brings us to symbolism. It's your last one. Symbolism. This is the practice of or art of using an object or a word to represent an abstract idea. Okay, the easiest way to explain this is the symbolism in our country. This idea of the abstract idea of America or the abstract idea of freedom. Remember we talked about abstract and concrete nouns. Concrete nouns are things you can punch. Can you punch freedom? No, you can't. It's abstract. It's a thing, but it's abstract. So we have symbols that represent those ideas. Our flag, stars and stripes, red, white, and blue. The eagle. Okay, even things that are American, like apple pie and the Grand Canyon, okay, all those can be symbols for the abstract idea of our country of America and for the ideals of it, like freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that kind of stuff. So that wraps up our literary terms. Hopefully we went through them fast enough that you understand them, but it wasn't too boring to watch this. Know that I'm still thinking about you guys. I'm sorry that this past week, because I'm filming it in this past week, has been so dreary and cold. And I'm hoping this week looks like it's going to be warmer and sunnier, so you're able to get outside. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. If not, keep trucking. You guys are awesome, and I miss you.